Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're going to be talking about the I-864. Specifically, we're talking about the issue of tax return copies versus tax transcripts. First of all, for those who are unaware what the I-864 is, just briefly, it's an affidavit of support for someone who is sponsoring an immigrant spouse to the United States. In the context of the K-1 visa, it's an I-134 affidavit of support, which there are videos on this channel which go into detail as to what the I-864 is or the I-134. There's another video specifically on this topic with specific respect to the I-134. But what we're talking about here is tax transcript versus tax returns. Generally speaking, the consular officer adjudicating a visa application wants to go ahead and not only see an affidavit of support signed by an individual that is an American citizen or lawful permanent resident sponsor of a fiancé or spouse coming to the United States, but they also want to see evidence that shows that that individual makes the requisite amount of money to go ahead and sponsor that intending immigrant. Most of the time, the best evidence is evidence of income. And copies of income tax returns generally are sufficient to meet the evidentiary requirements associated with the I-864 affidavit of support. That being said, in some cases, a tax transcript is requested. I've seen this happen where you have tax returns that are just filled out by hand and just sort of self-submitted. Oftentimes, I think that the consular officer basically just wants to sort of ensure that that individual actually did file their return, and for that reason they may request a tax transcript. In certain instances, I've also filed tax transcripts sort of prospectively with the intention of forestalling a request for tax returns or tax transcripts, just sort of knowing that I had an individual who did fill out their tax returns by hand, and knowing that it was a possibility that that might get asked for, we went ahead and we had the time. We just went ahead and requested tax transcripts anyway. So the thing to take away from this video is there are two options, and oftentimes people ask, what are tax transcripts? Well, you can actually write or contact the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, and request a transcript of the year previous or any previous tax year that you filed your tax returns, and they basically send back, it pretty much is what it sounds like. It's just sort of a breakdown of your filing, and that is sufficient for use with a consular officer to a U.S. Embassy or U.S. Consulate abroad, or I should say specifically here in Bangkok, it's always proven to be sufficient in association with an I-864 affidavit of support. In most cases, copies of a filed tax return will be sufficient, but I have seen circumstances where transcripts were subsequently requested, and so in some cases it might be beneficial to sort of forestall that request to go ahead and get a tax transcript just sort of preemptively in order to, again, just sort of head off getting a request for it later on down the road.